to Ryman Auditorium, the mother church of country music. I'm Nicole Judd, the associate producer of show development at the Grand Ole Opry, and it is an honor to be with you. Today is a very special moment as we come together to celebrate the legacy of one of country music's most iconic voices, George Jones. Yeah, we can yeah that. Yeah. In this milestone year, as we mark the 100th anniversary of the Grand Ole Opry, it feels especially fitting to recognize an artist who helped shape the Opry story across generations, mine included. George, who became a member of the Grand Ole Opry in 1956, was a defining presence, not just on our stage, but across the entire genre. I'll let that pass. Excellent. This new statue will join the Ryman Icon Walk, a tribute honoring artists whose legacies are deeply tied to the Ryman and the Grand Ole Opry. Statues like Loretta Lynn, Bill Monroe, Charlie Pride, and Little Jimmy Dickens are a permanent testament to their influence. I have a little George story that I was asked to tell. So I grew up listening to George Jones music. It's actually my first memory of music. My first concert, 4 years old, George Jones. My Nana used to have a pile of records that we could play with and play on her floor record player. And I loved George Jones' Love Bug record, probably because it was bright yellow and had his face plastered right on the front. And she would let me play that record just as loud as I wanted. Well, some years later, after I started working for the company, it was Keith Bilbrey, who's right here, who took me out on George's tour bus, which was parked right over there, in between two Opry shows down here at the Ryman. And he knocked on the door and he says, "George, it's time to pay the piper and meet one of our new folks." And I walked up there and George was so kind and met every expectation that I had for him, signed my record, talked to me, and then just went in and played the second show. So, you want to meet heroes and you don't know that they'll live up to the expectation, but he definitely did in every way. We're honored today to be joined by George's family, who will help us commemorate this moment. But first, I'd like to invite up Ryman Hospitality Properties Executive Chairman Colin Reed, whose vision for this icon walk back in 2015 is making this tribute possible today. Colin?
Thank you, Nicole, and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Nancy, and the family for being with us here this morning. I also noticed we've got several members of our City Council here that welcome. Thank you for being with us this morning. Let me start by saying the idea for this walk back in 15 was it was Jimmy's fault, little Jimmy's fault. What happened was every year since 2001 up until the year Jimmy died, every year we would take him duck hunting, but he would never go duck hunting. He would drink wine and go fishing. And I got to really know the guy so well. And then when he passed, I was so sad. I thought, we've got to find a way to memorialize little Jimmy Dickens, who has put so much effort over the years into the Grand Ole Opry. And hence we put Jimmy in front there. But the crowd, the fans were overwhelmed by, seeing Jimmy out there. So we decided to honor these wonderful, wonderful artists. Since then, we've added Bill Monroe, Loretta, Charlie Pride here next to me, all who left their mark on country music. As the caretakers of this magnificent building, we have a unique privilege, I think, ensuring its history with more than 800,000 guests a year. And what we quickly found is that the fans have really come to love these tributes along the walk here. The Ryman is the holy ground of country music to so many, and its icon walk adds another layer to our offerings as we share its history with guests from all over the world. It's remarkable how many times I see fans standing next to little Jimmy for a photo or have trouble getting into the drive here because of an entire tour bus has unloaded to take photographs of Charlie. through this partnership with the sculptor Ben Watts, we've been able to bring these special moments to fans. And today, we add another legendary artist to the Ryman Icon Walk by bringing the great George Jones, who had a fabulous career and is revered as one of the great legends of country music. He first performed in the building behind me. In the same decade, he became a member of the Grand Ole Opry in 1956, when the Opry called this place home. As we celebrate the Opry's centennial this year, we remember the artists like George who defined it. And it's not just the fans who love him, but when I speak to other artists who continue to play the Ryman and the Opry, they refer to him as the greatest country music artist of all time. In fact, earlier this year, during our Opry 100 special on NBC, Garth Brooks did a wonderful tribute to George, performing He Stopped Loving Her Today and calling it the greatest country song ever. Luke Combs also honored George this year on the 100, performing the grand tour for an Opry performance at the Ryman. The Ryman and the Opry were lucky to be part of George's story for so many years, so we feel it's only fitting to add George here amongst these other greats who have made a lasting impression to country music. I want to personally thank the Jones family for working with us to bring this tribute to life. And now I'd like to welcome up a member of the Grand Ole Opry, the great Jamie Johnson. Jamie, come on up here. He wants to say a few words. And Jamie asked me, he said, how long do you want to speak? I said, it depends on the weather. If it's hot, 2 minutes.
Right. So I don't get asked to do this very often. I don't know how long to talk, but I guess what I know about George was he was probably one of the most pure fans of country music that ever existed. He grew up in kind of a rough way. His dad, George Washington Jones, was a bit of an alcoholic and would come home drunk, wake George up and make him sing to all his drinking buddies. And instead of George taking that as abuse and turning away from music, he embraced it still. He loved country music. He loved singing. He loved country music so much that in the mid to late 50s, when they asked him to put out a couple of rock and roll songs, he wouldn't even let them use his name. He told them to put the name Thumper Jones on there. That way, if it failed, it wouldn't drag his name through the mud. And he was a Marine from 1951 to 53. And that's something he and I kind of bonded on. There's a lot of stories about George Jones' antics when he was drunk. I know of at least 2 occasions where he was duct taped to an item by Waylon Jennings. Or I say I've heard of 2 different situations, but one of my favorite George Jones stories, he was on the road with Buck Owens, and they were alternating nights who would open and who would close. And they were going to play a town that was really close to George's hometown, and he just knew all of his people were going to be there. But it was Buck's night to close. Well, George asked Buck if he could swap nights with him. You know, let me close tonight, and you close some other time. And Buck wasn't having it. Buck decided it served George right to have to open for him in his own hometown. So George took the stage and did something Buck couldn't do. George knew every song that Buck Owens was going to be doing that night, And because they were sharing the band, George went out and did Buck's entire set before before Buck came on, and when George walked off, he just left him with a follow that. That was his personality more so, I guess, than his character. Everything about George was larger than life. Some of the stories you heard just seemed almost made up and contrived in retrospect. Everybody's heard about the lawnmower incident. But that dude really drove a lawnmower 8 miles to get to a bar. You know, and at the time it didn't seem like an antic to him. It was what was necessary if he was going to get a drink. I heard of one time when he was checking out of a psychiatric hospital in Alabama, and the first thing he did was stop and get him a six-pack. But fast forward to the George Jones that I met in 2005. We were recording my very first album on a major label, and I had a song that I wanted to put on there that I'd pretty much written about him, and it was called Keeping Up with the Jonesin'. And I didn't know George at the time, so I asked my producer, Buddy Cannon, do you think we could get George to come do a line on this song? And the next thing I know, boy, we weren't just getting George Jones to sing on it. George and Nancy wanted me to be there when he did it, and so I brought some of my hooligan friends over there. We got to meet George Jones in the studio and listen to him sing, and then and it just lit me up, and we were fast friends, and we became more like family after that. So there was I don't remember exactly when this was, but it wasn't too long before he passed away. I went over to the house and sat in the living room. He and I started writing on a couple of songs. We never did get them finished, but I remember one of his ideas was dragging this old dragon ass around. And I asked him if that was D-R-A-G-O-N. In fact, we hung out so long that day that I was late for my show that night in North Carolina by about an hour and a half, and the audience didn't even care when they found out what I was doing. But George was always, he was always a warm hug and a bright smile and probably a couple of distasteful jokes. And that's how I remember him still. He was like a dear friend, but also kind of like a distant relative. I grew up on his music to the point that I felt like I knew everything about him. And to this day, Nancy and I are like family, and have been, and will be. So I know if he were here today, he'd be proud, but he'd also be very humble. So on behalf of George Jones, I'm going to say thank you all for making this happen for him. What an unbelievable icon in country music.
Thanks, Jamie. Those lovely stories. They don't make lawnmowers like that these days. Nancy, come on up, please. So about, I don't know, 12, 14 years ago, we purchased the photography collection of Les Leverett. He was the famous photographer that did so much great photography work through the 50s, 60s, 70s at the Opry. And we found this photograph of George, and it's an original, and we want you to have it at the Opry, playing the Opry, and it's a wonderful. But ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Jones.
Isn't that nice? Thank you so much. And I want to thank Colin Reed for putting this together. And Ben, wherever he is, that made these, there he is, that made the statue. And I can't say anything else because Jamie covered all of it, I think. But I'm just so proud to be here and so happy that this is happening, because George would be smiling about it, but he was such a bashful person. So is his daughter over here, Susan. She has the mannerism of her dad, and she's just like him, and she is my best friend, and I love her. But I just wanted to thank all of y'all for coming out, and this is going to be so much fun, and I want you to know that we're looking to get a museum back in, so don't give up on me yet. And I'm just happy that all of you showed up. Even Leland came out today. But I have to tell you the story about Leland over here. When Leland, he's the weatherman, he would come on, and George would, our house was big, and he'd be in his little room back there, and the first thing he would do, honey, come here, Leland's on. I'm like, who cares, you know? But come on. He said, he's on right now. So I couldn't wait to tell Leland when we were there for the Emmy show, and I'm just so excited. And also, we got an Emmy for the show we did in Huntsville, Alabama, if any of y'all were there. And yes, and I am so proud of that too. But there was 30-something artists there, and Jamie was there, and it was just a wonderful show. But I can't stress how happy I am about this. And I was telling Colin Reed a while ago that George would work the Ryman, and that's the only place that I didn't have to worry about. I wish he could have worked every weekend, because the only place he never got drunk. Never. It was like, that's the Mother Church of Country Music, and you don't drink there. But now I can't say that much about the Grand Ole Opry, because they're here too. But the Ryman, he loved the Ryman. And I just want to thank y'all. My heart's going boom, 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 but you know what? It's for the best of everything for George, and I promise you that I will not give up on George Jones's legacy. I will keep it going until the day I die. So y'all just hang in there with me, and I'll be here. I will get it going. Thank you so much, and thank you, Colin Reed and Ben.
Thank you, Nancy. If everybody would just stay put for just a minute, we're going to get Nancy in place here with Colin to unveil the statue. We want to make sure everybody gets good pictures, and then also if you'd stay put afterwards, we're going to make sure media gets their pictures as well to make sure everybody gets a great shot of the unveiling. So, Allison, you give me the cue when we're in place. Yep. Yep.
And my face turned blue. Lightning started flashing, thunder started clashing.
White lightning.